Very well. Hello, everyone. First, I would like to start by thanking all the organizers of this event. This is a great opportunity to exchange information and experience. My presentation is on a very ambitious project in Algeria, the building of a very large port infrastructure, but that was not welcomed unanimously by the users of the sea and the marine space. Public authorities, therefore, very recently in October, decided to completely revisit the preliminary study in order to redress some of the problems. A number of reservations had been expressed since the location for the site was announced. Now, as you know, Algeria is highly dependent on its the activities along its coastline. So, as I was saying, Algeria is highly dependent on port activities and on shipping in general. Most of imported goods come through the 10 ports that we have, 10 commercial seaports. The goods transiting through there are in the region of 50 million tons, and that is done by 10 or 11,000 ships on average. The port of Algiers receives about 25% of all commercial seaport traffic, and by 2050 it is expected that our ports will have to be able to handle over 38 million tons, which is huge compared to what we can handle today. Hence, the decision by the authorities to invest in further infrastructure in order to be able to handle future demand. So this project for a future port, at the beginning, everyone thought that it was the Algiers port that would have been expanded, but that solution was rejected very early on because the port of Algiers is completely surrounded by a city that is already highly encumbered. And so the choice was made to find another location, but not too far away from Algiers. In 2015, the government decided to start a preliminary study to find the best future location. And a partnership was signed in 2015. The final choice was a location located 88 kilometers from Algiers, Al Hamdania, close to Shershel, in the Vilaya region of Tipaza. The cost of the project was estimated at $3.6 billion, but was then erased later. The capacity that is planned for the port is 6.5 million containers per year. As soon as the project was announced to be located in Hamdania, a number of criticisms were leveled at the project. Because of the location. Most of the criticisms are because the plan for the port was not seen as rational. A number of things were not taken into account. First of all, the expected increase in pollution with the increased traffic. That pollution is bound to affect the wildlife in the region, and this is also bound to impact fisheries. There's a lot of fisheries in the region. The interpreters apologize. The sound is not very good. It's making our work quite difficult. Also, the loss of tourist potential in the area. This is a highly tourist area, and there's a loss of opportunity. The zone was already earmarked as a tourist extension zone. It's also a highly fertile area, so good for agriculture, and that land would disappear with the building of areas for the holding of containers. Would also lead to the loss of hundreds of hectares of forest along with, as well as the wildlife. There are also a number of significant archaeological areas with, and we will say a little more about that. So a number of identified areas of archaeological interest. So the authorities decided to change the project. Other reservations were formulated. First of all, the absence of stakeholder involvement or consultation. The many stakeholders impacted by the project were not involved. The project was not seen to be mature. Sufficient thought wasn't given to zoning. So lack of consultation, as I said, but also regulatory aspects. A number of laws would have been breached with this project. So in June 2020, the government quite rightly decided to restart from zero this initiative, which is necessary. And that was a laudable decision. If we can have the next slide, please.
Merci. Donc, réaction des autorités
So the authorities reacted to the criticism. I'm sorry, could we move back up, please? If we can come back up. So the study will be revised to take into consideration what I mentioned before, as well as a number of economic dimensions. Algeria has a whole package of legal texts that make it possible to plan the maritime space rationally and also reduce conflicts of use. And some of these texts need to be adapted to the present-day situation. What we're lacking, I think, are mechanisms for the enforcement of the very good principles that are outlined in the law. So a number of examples. So, looking at port development, a law was dating back to 2001, has to do with land development and coastal development as well. And it provides for a number of master plans for major infrastructure and nationally important facilities to be set up. There needs to be a port master plan. It needs to take into account, the master plan needs to take into account the various uses of the land in the area, tourism, agriculture, and as I was saying, a port master plan was already drawn up in 2007, and the law says that what is required is coordination between the various sectors and activities. the master plans should be initiated by the government and then coordinated by territorial or regional governments in cooperation and consultation with economic and social actors, as well as civil society. So citizens will be able to have a say in the future project. And says the speaker, I'm sorry, I don't see my slides changing.
Okay. Parfait.
Well, we can still hear you, says Aya. So what these laws are lacking is the mechanisms for enforcement. All they do is state broad principles. So we think that these principles that should lead to a reduction in the conflicts of uses should then be backed up by a text that explains how they are going to be implemented via good coordination between the various stakeholders, government, local and regional governments, society at large. Now then, coastline development, that too is the object of another law which was passed in 2002, a law on the protection and the development of the shoreline. And it provides for stakeholders to be involved in any development plan of a national dimension, so the state, local and regional governments and organizations and associations. And therefore, there's a ban on any new industrial activity on the coastline, with the exception of those listed in the law of 2002. So ports are included in there. That law also led to the creation of a coastline management structure called the CNL, the Coastline Management Committee. It has a number of prerogatives, but it cannot truly enforce. And for the sea and the shoreline to be protected, and I'm saying shoreline because in the law of 2002, the shoreline, in the definition of shoreline, this includes the sea up to a certain distance. And there's a proposal to convert the Coastline Development Committee into a high commission for consultation and planning of the maritime space. And that should give the entity more human and financial resources. That commission should be placed higher up. It should wield a little bit more clout, because the proposal is for it to report directly to the presidency. To Mr. Bouda, you just have 5 minutes. Speaking time, please. Yes. Okay, thank you. 5 minutes. So the law of 2003 provides for all measures to be implemented to prevent pollution. The port of Hamdania, the central port, does present pollution problems. And in this law, the principle is prevention, along with penalties. In the case of a violation, the law states that all projects to build infrastructure and amenities be preceded by an environmental impact assessment. So even NGOs can take projects to court. So there are ways and means to ensure that projects don't carry big pollution risks. Another law that was signed has to do with archaeological finds, archaeological heritage. La Hamdania is close to an ancient town, Chao, where you had the Phoenicians, the ancient Romans. So we have Roman ruins in the area. And a while ago, 24 cannons were found underwater. And the municipality embarked on an archaeological project, one under the water. One team dived under the water, and another team looked at the land and was tasked with establishing a survey to determine the place where there was a civilization. So there's also a law on the protection of cultural heritage. Two commissions were set up at the wilaya or local regional government level, and one at national level. They are in charge of protecting heritage, and their advice is paramount. Their opinion needs to be sought in order to find the right balance between the need to invest and the need to protect archaeological and historical heritage. And my last slide has to do with academic input. Academics will be consulted on the project. We know that a number of contacts have already been established with universities, but those that real solutions can come from universities and schools are the engineering schools, as well as the marine science and coastline development school, the maritime college, the fisheries and aquaculture research and development center, hydrographical services, the maritime studies laboratory, etc. And I hope that I haven't forgotten other universities that may also have the required skills. I think that as consultations go on, we will probably identify new skills on a national level. And so my conclusion, but that's it. Thank you.